Darth Zannah, apprentice of Darth Bane, second lord in the line of the Rule of Two, master of sorcery and infiltration, and Qui-Gon Jinn, former apprentice to Count Dooku, maverick Jedi Master, and an experienced warrior and field operative. If these two noted figures in galactic history ever met on the battlefield, who would win? Both combatants are humans, the most common and widespread species in the galaxy, specifically noted for their hardiness and adaptability. When she assumed the mantle of Sith Master, Darth Zannah was in her early 30s, specifically noted for her light athletic build and exceptional agility. However, though her stamina was impressive, she was a lightweight with poor physical strength and resiliency. A quintessential fragile speedster, she could dance circles around most opponents, but a single hit was often all it took to bring her down. By the time of his death, Qui-Gon Jinn was in his late 50s, noted for his large, powerful build and great strength. Though by no means invulnerable, his resiliency was quite impressive, shrugging off multiple physical strikes from Darth Maul over the course of their duel. However, his agility and stamina, though serviceable, were beginning to diminish as he aged. Though a powerful fighter, his ability to wage a war of attrition was limited. The dynamic between these two is similar to the dynamic between Zannah and Darth Bane. Zannah can definitely outrun and outlast Jinn, but he can still contend with her for a while at least, and while he can shrug off hits and keep soldiering on, she might as well be made of glass. For once, Qui-Gon Jinn has the advantage. Darth Zannah wielded the Bane's Heart lightsaber, a custom double-bladed lightsaber named for the specialized synthetic crystal that served as its focusing lens. Specifically intended to reinforce her application of Sorcery, the weapon featured slightly shortened blades for greater maneuverability. Qui-Gon Jinn's lightsaber is described in detail in the Phantom Menace Visual Dictionary, and I quote, "Following the custom of his day, Qui-Gon has built his lightsaber with a highly elaborate internal design. Multiple small power cells are stored in the scalloped hand grip, and microscopic circuitry governs the nature of the energy blade. Simpler lightsaber designs, built outside the halls of the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, typically use a single large power cell inside a solid hand grip. Star Wars lightsabers specified that the weapon was fitted with a single green-hued Adegan crystal. While Jinn's lightsaber is undeniably sophisticated, it provides no special benefits in combat, where Zannah's weapon is tailored to fit her fighting style, providing an advantage. Darth Zannah was a specialist practitioner of Sorcery, the resilience form. The discipline was selected for her by Darth Bane in order to compensate for her lightweight physique. Zannah can't take a hit, so Bane trained her in the defensive form to make sure she didn't. Aside from adapting the form for the saber staff, Zannah's application of Sorcery was very traditional, based around fending off an overwhelming quantity of attacks with minimal effort. She would continually spin her weapon, generating momentum for effortless deflection parries, backing up this defensive stone wall with balletic footwork and acrobatics. While her style was easily sustained for long periods and virtually unassailable, she lacked a dedicated offensive component, her attack capability limited purely to lightsaber counters. Qui-Gon Jinn was a master-level practitioner of Ataru, the aggression form. Jinn's application was heavily influenced by his master, the Makashi specialist Dooku, trading out the explosive, energetic movements of the aggression form for a more grounded and efficient method. In keeping with traditional Ataru, Qui-Gon was a momentum-based offensive duelist who backed up lightsaber combat with integrated physical combat techniques. His more grounded style, however, was built around strength and dexterity, vastly improving his defense and sustainability compared to traditional Ataru, while still boasting a flowing and elaborate offensive technique. This was reinforced by his use of Makashi-esque blade manipulation techniques, throwing aggressors off balance with deflection parries and shunt blocks, and undermining an opponent's defenses by catching them in the bind, either pinning their blade or forcing it out of line to open them up. Zannah's final duel with Darth Bane proved her ability to tank heavy lightsaber offensives. Any attempt to overwhelm her defenses is futile, which means that Jinn's typical flowing and elaborate attacks would be ineffective. However, based on the logistics, I see his use of Makashi binding and winding techniques as being quite viable against her. By engaging and pinning her blade, he is preventing her from twirling her weapon, undermining her primary technique, and forcing her to meet him strength to strength, the one thing she is dedicated to avoiding. And I don't see her evasive footwork as being enough to compensate, as Jinn is also a highly mobile fighter, capable of keeping pace with the likes of Darth Maul. I'm not arguing that Qui-Gon is better than Darth Bane, because we all know that Bane could whip Qui-Gon any day of the week, but Qui-Gon does do a number of things that Bane doesn't, and Zannah simply isn't prepared for them. Simply put, Qui-Gon Jinn is bringing more to the table. Darth Zannah's tactical approach was entirely centered around her force abilities. In all situations, her conduct boiled down to mounting a defensive holding action with lightsaber combat, and waiting for an opening to employ her Sith spells. Her effectiveness was based entirely on the viability of these spells. When opponents proved themselves vulnerable, she dominated, but when they resisted, she experienced serious problems. When she came up against a brick wall, she didn't rethink or adapt her approach, she simply escalated, bringing out more powerful spells. Qui-Gon Jinn's tactical and strategic approach was very intuitive and circumstantial. Rather than analyzing and planning for situations in advance, he instead makes his tactical assessments in the moment, adapting on the fly to changing battlefield conditions. Effectively flying by the seat of his pants, his functionality in various situations varied sharply. If he could get the drop on his adversaries, he was able to dominate through sheer unpredictability. But when facing opponents with an established game plan and foreknowledge of his capabilities, he could get in over his head very quickly. Zannah is too straightforward and rigid, abiding by a complete inward focus based entirely around her own capabilities and failing to take advantage of circumstantial factors. Her use of the terrain is limited to finding good defensive positions, and she has never made effective use of psychological warfare tactics, and she has proven herself vulnerable to both. And Qui-Gon Jinn has done both. A clever strategist can lead Qui-Gon by the nose with little difficulty, but a clever strategist, Darth Zannah, is not. Darth Zannah was a specialized Sith sorceress, relying on dark force magics and spells to overcome adversaries. Qui-Gon Jinn was almost the exact opposite. Though well regarded for his philosophical insight, he functioned as a Jedi Guardian, focusing on combat skill rather than arcane power. In combat, Jinn has made use of force pushes and shoves to stagger or disable attackers, a power that would be virtually useless against Zannah due to her well-developed telekinetic defenses. Furthermore, Jinn relied mainly on lightsaber combat, and didn't favor using the Force in a combative manner. Jinn was most strongly connected to the living Force, living his life as a willing outlet for this power, allowing the Force to act through him rather than the other way around. Gifted with an ability to form empathic bonds with other creatures, Jinn was an exceptional telepath, influencing the minds and memories of subjects, inducing extreme sleepiness, and communicating with other Jedi. In my view, as a master telepath and an outlet for the living Force, Qui-Gon Jinn was effectively immune to Zannah's primary offensive powers, Sith spells of fear and madness. These illusion spells worked by striking at the worst fears of the target, tormenting them with visions of unimaginable horror. The effect of these images can be so profound that victims have had their sanity completely shattered. However, because the illusions work by playing on the fears and insecurities of a subject, they can be rendered ineffective if the fear in question is something that he or she has already come to terms with and overcome, allowing the subject to recognize the illusions for what they are. After that, dispelling them is simply a matter of willpower. Not only has Qui-Gon overcome all of his personal demons, but as an extension of the living force, such powers would effectively be water off his back. He's probably better equipped to defend himself than Darth Bane, where the Dark Lord marshaled his willpower by dredging up his rage. Jinn's reaction would be to merely notice. The only true offensive power that Zannah has ever used was summoning tendrils of dark side energy capable of dissolving any material, essentially physical embodiments of the destructive power of the dark side of the Force. However, Zannah was only able to utilize this ability once, due to the massive demands and labor intensity of the power, forcing her to rely on an external source of energy, in the one case, the dark side nexus on Umbria. And even when provided with such an energy source, she only used it as a desperation tactic, as it demanded all of her attention and focus, leaving her vulnerable. Neither has a particular advantage over one another as a Force wielder, because neither can do anything to one another. Zannah's focus on the arcane comes at the expense of the practical, where Jinn allows the Force to act through him rather than vice versa. Qui-Gon Jinn is uniquely qualified to take down Darth Zannah. Her effectiveness hinges on her fear spells, and they would be useless against him. He can outperform her physically, contend with double-bladed lightsabers, and he is unquestionably the superior swordsman. While Zannah's rote response defensive sequences were well suited for fending off the bulldozer offensive of Darth Bane, Jinn's more precise blade manipulation techniques allow him to pick her apart and dismantle her. A hypothetical confrontation between these two would start out very similarly to Zannah's final duel with Darth Bane. Jinn would engage first, hammering on Zannah with direct heavy offense, and she would fend off his assault with consummate ease. However, he would simply be allowing her to settle into a comfortable rhythm before suddenly changing up his approach. Where Darth Bane backed Zannah onto a patch of loose, uneven earth to trip up her footing, Jinn would engage and pin her blade, leaving her open to a sudden physical strike. If Jinn failed to simply finish her while she was on the ground, she would respond with her Sith spells, only to find them even less effective against Jinn than they were against Bane. From there, they would simply re-engage and repeat until Zannah went down. Her rote response defensive style simply doesn't offer her enough flexibility to contend with the intuitive adaptability of Qui-Gon Jinn. I declare Qui-Gon Jinn the victor.